Chana Man has a new Anikel, Yecheskel, son of Levi and Reza Liborov. Chayesara Marazav announces the birth of two grandsons, one to David and Leah Marazav and one to Zalman and Bracha Friedman. The daughter of Fega Rachel Galam is engaged, Sarah Galam engaged to Shmuel Isaac Reitzes. Leah Goldman's grandson, Ari Siegelman, becomes a bar mitzvah on Tisha B'Av tonight. Mitzvah Hashem, that's not what it will be called. And today is also the yahrzeit of Yehudis Edelman's father, Yosef ben Eliyahu. So we wish Mazel Tov to all of our classmates. There should only be simchas. Everybody should have a lot of Hasidic nachas, gesundheit, and freiligkeit. And Harav Yosef ben Eliyahu should have Aliyas Haneshama. We're learning today in the schus of a refuah shalema for Menachem Mendel ben Nechamadina. He should have a refuah shalema nisis. And we are also learning for Aliyas Haneshama of Miriam Mintz. I tried looking for her father's name and I couldn't find it. If anybody knows it and they could please unmute themselves so we could just say the entire name properly. But if not, they should certainly knows whose neshama we want to honor here. And we're learning Ve'eschanan, the first sicha. Just going to wait to see if anybody knows the father's name. Aleph. Al hatevois betchilas parshasenu Ve'eschanan el Hashem. On the words Ve'eschanan el Hashem, and I entreated Hashem, and this is Moshe speaking, of course, muva'os b'sifri beis deis. The Sifri brings down two opinions, two understandings of the word Ve'eschanan. Aleph, Ve'eschanan hu milashon chinam, that Ve'eschanan is etymologically related to chinam, which means for free, without any payment. Hainu shebikesh Moshe Rabbeinu mekadosh Baruch Hu sheyaniach lo lehikanes l'Eretz Yisrael b'tor matnas chinam, meaning that Moshe begged and entreated and beseeched Hakadosh Baruch Hu that he should allow him to enter into Eretz Yisrael as matnas chinam, as a present that Hashem gives him, not because he's deserving, but just because, chinam, for free. The afal pisha tzadikim hayu yicholim litleis b'maseim atoivim v'loy bikshu min hamokim shitin lem elachinam. And the Sifri continues that even though tzadikim are able to ask Hashem for things and to say, I have a tab with you, I deserve this, I can reference litleis, I can hang this on certain things that I've done, but tzaddikim wouldn't do this. They would ask Hashem to give them chinam, meaning not because they deserve, but simply because it's for free. Hashem is just giving them something that they don't necessarily deserve. So somebody just wrote that it's Miriam Bas Gershon, and I don't know if that's a complete name, but she should have an Aliyas Haneshama, Miriam Bas Gershon. Thank you for that. So that's one opinion that the Sifri brings down, that Eschanan is milashon chinam, beis, but the Sifri also brings down another opinion or another way of understanding this, that Eschanan hu echad me'asar l'shon shel tefillah, that the word Ve'eschanan is one of 10 different, here we have it, Miriam Bas Gershon Pinchas. Thank you, Chana. That Ve'eschanan is one of 10 different terms that we have for tefillah, or 10 different types of tefillah. So Ve'eschanan is to beg, to supplicate, to beseech, to entreat. There's also tza'aka, there's rina, there's naka, there's pegia, there's all kinds of terms for tefillah, and Ve'eschanan is one of them. That's in the Sifri. The Rebbe then says, V'hinei b'medrash Rabbah ala pasuk, but in the medrash on this same pasuk, huvu gamke beis inyanim elu, the Medrash also brings down these two different things. Shebeschanan hu, that Eschanan is number one, me'asara l'shani shel tefillah. It's one of 10 different terms for tefillah, or maybe referring to different types of tefillah. And beis v'chein miloshem matnas chinam. And it is also etymologically related to the idea of receiving something for free. But in the Medrash, different from the Sifri, these two ideas are not brought down as two different ideas. They're brought down as one understanding of what Veschana means. Miman Amar Echad, and they are attributed to one teacher. One person gives us both of these explanations. Vizel Shainai. And the Rebbe cites the Lashon from the Medrash. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Asara l'shainas nikras tefillah. Tefillah, the general idea of tefillah, is referred to in 10 different ways. And he lists them, v'tachanunim. And one of them is tachanunim, to supplicate, to beseech, to beg. Tichsiv, as it says, v'eschanan el Hashem. And it brings down our pasuk that we're studying now. Umikulan, and from all of these, from all of the different ways of davening to Hashem, loy nispal al Moshe ela b'loshen tachanunim. And Moshe chose to relate to Hashem, to pray to Hashem in this particular modality, referred to as tachanunim. Amar Rabbi Yochanan continues to say, Mikana ta loimet. From here we learn, she'ein liberia klum eitzel boire, that no creature, no person who was created can come with any type of claim to their creator. Sharei Moshe, because look, Moshe, who was so great and accomplished so much, and if anybody could say, look, I deserve it, Moshe could have said that, but Moshe, we see here that Moshe didn't say, look what I did for you all these years. Look how I took care of Bnei Yisrael, etc., etc. No, he came and b'loshen tachanunim. He beseeched Hashem, give this to me not because I'm deserving, because. Hainu, shaloshen tachanunim ve'eschanan koi al tefila bakasha b'tor matnas chinam. And this means that the word tachanunim ve'eschanan refers to a tefillah or a request that is simply without a cheshbon. It's not because you deserve it. It's not because you did something. It's matnas chinam. Why? Because no creation can come with any type of claim and any kind of tab and any kind of computation to their creator. And the Medrash now quotes Rabbi Levi. Why did Moshe not come with any other modality of prayer? Why b'tachatnunim? And the Medrash, what Rabbi Levi says there finishes up with saying b'matnas chinam ani oisa imai, that Hashem says I'm going to do for him, and I do in general in a way of matnas chinam. V'tzarech lahavin. Mahi svaras hamachlekes ben hasifri v'hamedrash in beis pirushim heim by perish echad. So the Rebbe says we have to understand what's the difference between the Sifri and the Medrash. Okay, anybody else would just say, okay, they're both saying the same thing, but the Rebbe says if one is giving it to us as two different ideas, number one, the tachanunim is miloshem matnas chinam, and the other is, the ve'eschanan is related to tachanunim, and that's miloshen matnas chinam. And the other opinion is that ve'eschanan is one of 10 ways of davening. That's a Sifri. How is this different from the Medrash, who basically gives us the same information, but it's wrapped differently? It's presented differently. It's presented as in one fell swoop as the opinion of one person, but it incorporates both of these ideas. What's the difference? Beis. The Kasfu Mefarshim, and Mefarshim stopped on this and wrote, Bebir Achiluk ben Beis Hadeis Besifri. And here in Ha'ara 7, it says the Cheskuni and the Lavush comment on the difference between the two opinions that the Sifri brings down, okay? We're not talking about the difference between the Sifri and the Medrash. The Mefarshim say, what does the Sifri want to tell us here? Lefi perish ha'alif sheveschanun hu milashon matnas chinam, in accordance with the first explanation that ve'eschanan is related etymologically to the word chinam, hareze ki'ilu nemar ve'eschanom. You should read ve'eschanan as ve'eschanom. Hainu sheMoshe bikesh me'Hakadosh Baruch Hu laseis li matnas chinam. Va'et chinam. Okay, so like it's a contraction of two words. I'm asking for something free. V'lachein ein ze min al-shona shel tefillah. Me'achar shebetevas ve'eschanom gufa ein kol lashon shel tefillah bakasha. Because in the word ve'eschanom, it's simply a contraction of and give me for free, and it's not one of the lashonos of tefillah. But in contradistinction, according to the second opinion of the Sifri, it's ve'eschanon. It's one of the lashonos, one of the terms for tefillah. Harei ve'eschanon hu lashon techina v'tachanunim. That it is etymologically related to the Hebrew words for beseeching, for begging, etc. Ulefiza nimtza. And so now, once we understand this, Shadas HaMedrash HaMetzaref is based on Yom Yachad, that when we go now to the Medrash and we compare and contrast it to the Sifri, He sha'af al pisha tevas veschanan eina milashon chinam ela hi milashon tachanudim harei hatoichen de tfilas tachanudim hu bakashas matnas chinam. Okay. So what's the difference between the Sifri and the Medrash? That the Medrash is putting these two ideas together. So it's basically telegraphing to us that even though the word ve'eschanan is not linked etymologically with the word chinam, but rather it's milashon tachanunim, it's from the Hebrew word to beg, to beseech, to supplicate, to entreat. But the teichen of what it means, tachanunim, but what is the specific modality of tachanunim as opposed to other 9 ways of davening to Hashem? Hu bakashas matnas chinam. It is asking for something for free. But we have to understand, the Rebbe says, but since, according to both the Sifri and the Medrash, in the final analysis, when it all shakes out, they're both saying the same thing. That Moshe didn't come and say, you owe me this. I have a cheshbon with you. It's time for you to pay up. According to both, Moshe said, I'm asking for something that's I don't deserve necessarily. I'm just begging you for this. So if both are basically telling us the same thing, im kain, mahu yisoid v'toichen haplukta Moshe nakat lashon shepirusha chinam bilvad kedas hasafri, oy lashon shel tefillah. So what's the difference? In other words, why does the Sifri bring it down as 2 different limudim, as 2 different ideas? If in the final analysis, it's all going to be mashed together, and it basically means that he beseeched Hashem and he asked him for matnas chinam. So is it really important to know that it's a lashon shel tefillah, elo shezehu sug lashon hamatim lebakashas matnas chinam, that it belongs to a category called tefillah. It's one of 10 ways in which you can pray. But this particular modality, ve'eschanan, means that you ask for something as a matnas chinam. So basically, the Rebbe is saying, why does the Sifri divide it in two? And what can we learn from this? What is the Sifri trying to signal here? Seif Gimel. V'habir bazeh. כשאדם מבקש מהקדוש ברוך הוא שייתן לצרכיו, או כיוצא בזה, יש בזה בייז עניינים. When a person turns to Hashem and requests that Hashem should give him certain things, there are two aspects of this request. There's Aleph, the oifen habakasha. There's the way in which we ask. Tachanunim oitvia, whether we beg, we beseech, we entreat, or we demand. That's one aspect. Beis hasiba lekach shakadosh baruch hu yimale es bakashasoi im kitashlum hamagia loi oy b'matnas chinam. And then there's what drives our tefillah, or what's our reckoning, or what's the reason that we think Hashem should fulfill our request. Is it because we believe that we're deserving of it, or because we're asking for a matana? We're asking for a present that we don't necessarily deserve. So the two aspects are the way in which we ask and the mindset when we're asking. So it's not just the words and the style, but it's also what's driving your calculus when you come and you're asking. Because Hashem created this person, each one of us, so Hashem has to give us our needs. As we say, V'rachamav al kol ma'asav. Hashem takes pity on all that Hashem created. Ubifrat b'yosim b'nam shel Avram Yitzchak Yaakov. And especially because we are children of Avram Yitzchak Yaakov. V'im kain. And as children of Avram Yitzchak and Yaakov, as such privileged, exalted, miyuchastik people, magia loy su'uda shleima b'shaita v'yoser. Each one of us should get, like Shlomo HaMelech used to make a su'uda in his heyday, like in his time, like everybody should have an overabundance of everything that they need. And especially, and specifically, if you're shomer Torah mitzvahs. Because Hashem says in the Torah, Hashem says, if you're going to walk in the ways of my statutes, I will give you rain. I will give you an abundance of all of your material needs. V'im kein yesh lemar. Shagam inin hatfila, kifi shu tzarech liyos milchatchila al pitaris emes, hu b'nei shahadavar magia loy. So you could say, based on this, you could infer that the whole inyan of tefillah, coming to ask Hashem for something, as it is explained to us al pi Torah, seemingly is coming to ask Hashem to pay up on what is owed to us, according to the Torah. And even though you might ask, you might push back, you might challenge this thesis, and you might say, if it's so simple that we are owed all of this, especially because of our ma'asim tovim, so why does Hashem make us pray? Why should we not have to ask for it? It should just be delivered to our door. So the Rebbe says, Rebbe says, on top of the fact, in addition to the fact that through prayer, Hashem gives us more and gives it to us b'sever panim yafais in a way with a smiling face, as it were. In other words, there are many ways in which something could come to a person. Some ways are more happy, some ways are less so. Some ways are more dignified, some ways are less so. So in addition to the fact that through us davening, the Eibishter gives us more than mimashe magia lebetor schar, more than we are deserving of because of what we did, and we get it b'sever panim yafais, and we get it tzugazund with a happy face from Hashem. Yadua shafilu masha kadosh baruch hu noisim betur schar eina ba'ofish hakadosh baruch hu mechuyev b'davar. But we have to remember, first and foremost, that even something that we get as a schar, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us as a schar, it's not because Hashem is mechuyev, because Hashem is obligated. U'chediksiv, like it says, V'loi Hashem v'lecha Hashem chesed, ki ata teshalem leish k'ma'asehu. Now, this is saying, this pasuk from Tehillim, Asher ata teshalem leish k'ma'asehu, hu chesed me'es Hashem. The Rebbe says this pasuk means that the fact that Hashem repays, quote unquote, to a person according to what he says, this is a chesed me'es Hashem. In other words, Hashem is not mechuyev to give us schar. That is a chesed. V'lachein tzarich lispal HaKadosh Baruch Hu al zeh. And therefore, we have to daven. Forget about the extra, and forget about that it should come to us b'sever panim yafais. But just on the fact that we should get what is quote unquote deserving, we have to daven. And we can't come and demand it, but rather we come and we request that Hashem should fulfill our request in a way of matnas chinam. We're not deserving of anything, but please Hashem, give it to us anyway. Okamaymer Chazal, and like the Chazal teach, the Gemara in Bracha, shelo yitla es tefilosei b'schus atzmai. A person should never make his bakasha, his tefillah to Hashem, dependent on his zachiyos. Ki gam kasher Kadosh Baruch Hu mimales habakasha b'sibas ma'asav hatovim, ein makom litleis habakasha b'schus atzmai lehispalel aseli b'schusi. The Gemara teaches that even when Hashem fulfills our request because of our masim tovim, it's not seemly for us to come before Hashem and say, do it because of my schusim. It's just not okay to do that. Dalet. Now we're in a better position to understand, because the Rebbe's question was, bottom line is that the Sifri and the Medrash are basically teaching us the same thing. So, but the Sifri subdivides the limud in two, and the Medrash gives it to us in one fell swoop. There has to be a difference. The Rebbe says, now we're in a position to understand. Beis ha'ofanim hanal, b'kishur lashon ve'eschanan. Both aspects of the eschanan that were mentioned earlier in Seif Beis, im ha'inyan de matnas chinam mivatim beis ha'ofanim b'vakashas matnas chinam, that both things that we spoke about regarding matnas chinam express two modalities within requesting in a way of matnas chinam. Lefi ha-medrash ve'eschanan matnas chinam. The medrash, when it talks about ve'eschanan, and that it is entreating Hashem in a way of asking for something for free, mita'er rak es oifen habakasha, k'moshe nemar tachanunim yidaber rosh, va'ashir yane azus. The medrash is focusing on the way the request is placed before Hashem. Like it says in Mishlei, a poor person asks with tachanunim, supplicates, begs, and a rich person answers Hashem with hubris. Misha Aimid Bitnua shall bittel hefach ha'azus tfilasa he beloshen tachanunim matnas chinam. A person who is in a posture of bittel, of self-abnegation, which is the opposite of arrogance, his tefillah is called a tefillah beloshen tachanunim. He supplicates, and he's not coming to Hashem with any claim and with any expectation. He's asking for something free. Kiloima, this is to say, this person knows that, yes, he has done good things. And still in all, he asks Hashem for his needs, not as payment, not as compensation, but as something that Hashem gives him just because. Matnas chinam im loshain tachanunim. He's asking for something for free, and he's doing it in a way of tachanunim. He supplicates in a way that is humble. Ha'inyan de matnas chinam nika rak beloshen va'efen atfila. But the Rebbe says, but what the Medrash is really focusing on is the way in which the tefillah enters. Just forgive me for 1 minute. I just have to see if this is a false alarm, I hope. Sorry about that. I hope the noise is not too disturbing. There's some work being done in the building, and it triggered the system. Okay, so the Medrash is focusing on the way in which the request is made before Hashem. It's in the lashon of tachanunim. It's the oifen hatfila, the way in which the tefillah, the request, is lodged before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Masha enkein b'sifri. In contradistinction, the Sifri, ha'inyan de matnas chinam, the idea of matnas chinam, the concept of matnas chinam, eina rak beloshen tfilasai. The Sifri is not just focusing on the, let's say, the semantics, the way in which the tefillah is lodged, elagam bahargashasai, but it is also speaking to the feelings of the person when they offer this tefillah to Hashem. Who mevakesh matnas chinam mipnei shemargish shahadavar einoi magi aloi. The Sifri is bringing our attention to what tachanunim means, ve'eschanan, that it's not just how you say it, but it's what are you feeling when you say it. You're asking Hashem for something from a place where you say, Hashem, I don't deserve this. Lefi hagashasai ein loy zechuyesh. As far as he's concerned, he has no zechuyesh. He's asking Shakadosh Baruch Hu yimalis bakashasai, and still he's asking that Hashem should fulfill his request. V'lachem mevakeshu me'akadosh Baruch Hu matnas chinam, and that's why he's asking for free, because he feels in his heart he has no claim, he has no collateral, he has nothing. He has no leverage. And for this reason, Shitas Hadea Aleph the Sifri he sheveschanan hu loshem matnas chinam, and that's why the Sifri divides it, subdivides it. And the first idea that he sets forth is that veschanan is a contraction of asking for something in a matnas chinam, umemela ena min halashayne shel tefillah, and therefore. The first opinion is not that Veschanan is a lashon tefillah. Is it very disturbing to all of you? What's going on here? Okay, good. It stopped, Baruch Hashem. Oh my gosh. It's scary and it's also mind-splitting. Okay. It's just some work that triggered the system, which is pretty sensitive. Okay, so the Sifri is therefore subdividing it and saying, first of all, the eschanan is a word that hints to give me for free. It's not necessarily one of the classic ways of praying. Okay, and here the Rebbe is now beckoning us to enter into a deeper understanding of what's going on here. That the Sifri is bringing our attention to the fact that asking Hashem bitor matnas chinam be'emes, when you truly, truly believe that you don't deserve anything, you're coming before Hashem, give me something for free. This is lechatchila, not one of the iterations of tefillah. It transcends tefillah. It's something new. And although Moshe certainly always remembered that he was the one that brought the Torah for Sinai to the Yidden va'od, and he did so many other things. And therefore, he felt that he did have masim tovim, many masim tovim, awesome masim tovim. Hine anivusoi shel Moshe ha'isekadola ad kedei kach shesavar she'ein magia loy me'uma avor zeh. But his humility was so profound that he believed that he did not deserve anything, that he was not deserving of anything because he was the conduit for all of these great things. And in the brackets, the Rebbe explains a theme that we have learned many times, ki yadua habiur, as is well known, the explanation. And I find that now this explanation surfaces in many different writings, but it comes from Chassidus, from the Alter Rebbe's Maimorim, etc. On the pasuk va'ish Moshe anav ma'od mikol adam ashal pnei adama. So how could it be that Moshe was the most humble person on the face of this earth, having done so many great and awesome things? And the Torah says he spoke to Hashem in a singular fashion, face to face, and so on and so forth. Chassidus explains, Shemebli habeit al kach Moshe yadaz ma'alais of hagdalos legabe kol adam. Notwithstanding the fact that Moshe knew how much greater he was than most people, and yet he was the most humble of all people. Why? Because he truly believed that all of these things could not be attributed to him. But rather, he received all of this from above, and he was simply the pipeline, simply the conduit. And even more than this, on the contrary, if somebody else would have received his characteristics and his abilities, they would have surely done better than he did. So Moshe came before Hashem with no expectations, with no cheshbon. It totally transcended the conventional act of tefillah. And this is also the reason for the terminology that is different between the Sifri and the Medrash. The Medrash mudgash, the Medrash underscores she'ein leberia klum eitzel boiren, that no creation has any claim against the Creator. Hainu, she'etzel HaKadosh Baruch Hu avodah zu eina tefesas makom. That from the perspective of Hashem, anything that a person does doesn't really figure that greatly. And therefore, we ask Hashem, give it to us for free. Give it to us as matnas chinam. Because whatever we do, what does it already mean to Hashem? Masha Enkein b'sifri. But the Sifri is teaching us something different. The terminology is important. The Sifri, in the Sifri Mivor, the Sifri explains, Shahayu Yechalim Litles, B'Maaseim Hatovim. That Tzaddikim should have been able to come before Hashem and to say, look, I did all these great things. V'loi bikshu min hamakam she'yitin lehem elachinam. And they made the decision to not ask Hashem to do it because of something that they were deserving of, but rather to do it free. And so it's a different emphasis. The approach of the Sifri is not that whatever a person does is negligible, if at all considered by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but rather Ella ha'anivu shel hatzadikim. But the Sifri is underscoring the humility of tzaddikim. Shema'aseim ha'tovim einam tovsim mokam be'eineihem gufam. That the tzaddikim don't make such a big deal. They don't reckon that their maaseim are such great, awesome deeds. So the medrash is coming from the approach that vis-a-vis Hashem, what can anybody's actions really mean in the final analysis? The Sifri is saying something else completely. In the eyes of the tzaddikim, because of their anivos, they don't see their masim tovim as something that they can use as leverage for asking Hashem for something. Hey, now the Rebbe takes us deeper. Lefi bir zeh beveis haifanim sheish lahavin es tfilas Moshe v'eschan el Hashem. So now once we understand the two ways in which we're able to understand ve'eschanon, Muzbar gam toichen hachiluk bein beis haperushim shehevi Rashi b'mana kadosh baruch hu rav lecha. So if you have a chumash in front of you, if you go a few psukim further in pasuk chav vav, so I'll read the whole pasuk. Vayis'aber Hashem bi lemanchem. Hashem got angry with me because of you. V'lo shama elai, and he did not listen to me. Vayomer Hashem elai, and Hashem said to me, Rav, not Rav Lecha, Rav Lach, it's enough for you. Al tesev daber elai oi b'davar hazeh. Don't talk to me about this anymore. Enough. Enough with the Veschanan, the 515 times that you're begging me in all different ways. Enough. I don't want to hear another word. Now Rashi says on the words Rav Lach, so Rashi gives two explanations. Stop talking because number one, Shelo harav kama kasha, that people shouldn't say, look at how difficult, how hard, how unyielding is this teacher. Va'atalmid kama sarvanu maftir, and how obstinate and pressing is the disciple. That's one thing that Rashi brings down from Gemara Seita. Davar acher, he brings another explanation, Rav Lach, harbe mizeh shamor lecha. More than what you're asking for is reserved for you. Rav tuv hatzafein lecha. Much is the goodness that is hidden for you. So those are the two things that Rashi says on the words Rav Lach, that Moshe repeats what Hashem told him. So the Rebbe says that these two explanations on the word Rav Lach correlate with the two ways of understanding V'eschanon that are brought down by the Sifri and the Medrash, respectively. Aleph. The first thing that Rashi says on Rav Lach is Shelo yomru harav kama kosher v'talmud kama sarvan maftir. Stop begging me already. The optics are bad. People are going to say, look at how unyielding is the teacher and how unceasing is the disciple and hoping to gain something. And then Rashi says, much more goodness than you're asking for is put away for you. A lot of good is hidden for you. And the Rebbe says, they correlate with the two ways of understanding Beschanan. In accordance with the understanding that Moshe asked, not just in the way that he asked, but that in his heart, in the feeling that fueled his request, he was mamish asking for matnas chinam. That he has to stop asking, that because of what it's going to look like appearances. Because if not for this, because if he's truly asking as matnas chinam, there's absolutely no calculus, there's no equations here, there's no cheshbon, so it's a davar ein sof. You could keep asking and asking and asking and asking. If you come with a request and you're asking based on some cheshbon, then at a certain point, you get the hint that maybe you don't have enough deposited to make that kind of withdrawal, or it's just not going to happen. But if you're coming mamish from a place of matnas chinam, so what's the cap on asking? It's not, it doesn't, what you're asking for is not dependent on anything in particular. But according to the understanding that Beschanan is one of 10 modalities of prayer, meaning how you ask, and the fulfillment of the tefillah comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu because of the zechuyos of the one who is praying. Mana HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So to this, Hashem answers, you could stop begging me. This I'm not going to give you, but harbe mizeh shamor lecha. But more than even what you're asking for is put away for you. Rav tuv hatzafen lecha. A lot of greatness is hidden for you. Haschar al maasecha tovim hu harbe mizeh. Your schar for your maasim tovim is even more than what you're asking. Vav. But in Sivav, the Rebbe doubles down and he says, "Abalhu gufa tamabe." But this itself begs a question. Mahu hatam v'hayisoid leplukto zu ben hasefri lemedrash. Im v'eschanan matnas chinam de tfilas Moshe hu rak inin beloshan hatfila. Oy mipnei shebe'emes savar Moshe she'ein zu magia loi. V'lechein lo yhaya b'yacholta linkait loshan shel tfila. Kim rak levakish b'tor matnas chinam kedas hasefri. But the Rebbe says, okay, we understand that there are two opinions here, and we could even see how those two opinions are responded to in the Eibishter's response to Moshe. But now this is just making us ask again. But what is the reason and what is the basis for this plukta, for this argument between the Sifri and the Medrash? What compels each one to double down on a different aspect? The Medrash on the style of request, and the Sifri on the inner landscape of the requester. And the Rebbe says, we might say that the following is the explanation, but first we have to preface with more information. Ubahakdim. And we will preface. Al Moshe Rabbeinu nigzera hagzera shelo yikones la'aretz. There was a gezerah that was decreed upon Moshe that he would not go into the land of Eretz Yisrael. Va'av machshavta shel Moshe la'achrei shekavashti Eretz Sichem va'oig shema hutar haneder. And we're taught that Moshe had a thought that perhaps because he had conquered Sichon va'oig, and Sichon va'oig were going to be part of Eretz Yisrael, and by conquering it, he was in that land. So maybe hutar haneder. Maybe the vow that Hashem had taken that he's not going to go into the land was somehow absolved. Harehi amura rak b'negei l'shvuas hakadosh baruch hu sheMoshe lo yikanas Eretz Yisrael. But this only helps for the shvua, for being matir neder, as it were, kavyachal, on the shvua that Hashem made. Asher al zeh yesh makom leimar dami'acha sheneder shehuta miktsasei huta kuloi hare betela hashvua. So if you're focusing on the neder, on the vow that Hashem took, then there is place to say, because about vows it says that once a small part of the vow is absolved, is rendered null and void, then the whole vow is rendered null and void. So the whole shvua is betela. It's all abnegated. But the Rebbe says, "Aval ze'enim mevatel es etzem hagzeira." But this only helps on the shvua. It doesn't obviate the gzeira, the decree of Hashem. The ha'inish and the punishment, Eretz Yisrael, that he will not go into Eretz Yisrael. V'lachein, and therefore taketh la'achar shechashav shema hutar neder. And so immediately after Moshe thought, I conquered Sichem v'Oig, maybe the neder is now going to be completely absolved, he taketh miyad, immediately jumped on this idea, his bala lakadosh baruch hu levatel ulahasir as masha nigzor gezerah. So once the shvua is maybe absolved, now Moshe jumps on this idea immediately to daven to render null and void the gezerah. Va'al pizeh yesh leimar. So based on this back end story, we might say, shaplukta ben hasefri lemedrash toli beveis hadeus im hatfila ma'ila gam la'achar gzar din oidavke koidim gzar din. So we might say that the difference in approach between the Sifri and the Medrash is connected to two opinions regarding tefillah. If tefillah is efficacious even after a gezerah was handed down, or it is only helpful to ward off a gezerah prophylactically. So the Rebbe says that the two opinions that are being set forth, the Sifri and the Medrash, correlate to a different plukta, a different thing that is studied about tefillah, and the question is, to what extent is tefillah helpful and efficacious? Can it only help before a gezerah to make sure that there is no gezerah to begin with, or can it even break a gezerah? Das ha-medrash, so the medrash goes in line kahashita shehatfila ma'ila gam la'achar gzar din. The medrash opines in alignment with the shita that tefillah can be helpful even after a gezerah. V'lachein hispalel Moshe l'kadosh baruch hu be'echad me'asara l'shayna shel tefillah, and that's why Moshe davened to Hashem with one of the 10 ways of davening. Ella shemi beinehem gufa. But it's only that from amongst the 10 ways of davening, Bachar Lashon Tachanunim Dafta, he chose beseeching, entreating. Masha Enkein, but in contradistinction, Das HaSifri B'Perish HaAleph, but the Sifri, by delineating two different Perushim on Veschanan, in his first Perush, Kahashita she'ein hatfila ma'ila ela kaidem gzardin. He is opining in alignment with the shita that tefillah is only helpful before a gezerah. Umemela, and therefore, binyanenu, lashon shel tefillah lo'yhaisim eviatayeles. So in the pasuk that we are studying, in the word ve'eschanan, tefillah doesn't enter here, because tefillah would never be helpful, because the gezerah was already given, And there is a shita that after Gzeira is given, tefillah can't be helpful. V'loi bikesh, and therefore Moshe did not ask in any other way, ella bitur matnas chinam, which the Rebbe has already told us transcends all the modalities of tefillah. Because in accordance with the opinion that after a Gzeira, tefillah is not helpful, so he's not going to come to Hashem with something that's not helpful. Zayin, v'yesh leimar. Don't we have a precedent in Torah that tefillah can help after Gezerah from the Avos? Yes, it would seem yes. And I'm just going to give you what comes to mind, but I haven't studied this, I haven't looked this up, I haven't asked anybody. But first of all, there's always the idea that before Matan Torah and after Matan Torah, we don't import things from the Avos and the Imahis to halacha the way we do it today. And this plukta about if tefillah is efficacious only before or after is already from a different time. But if somebody has a different explanation or additional explanation, please. And Tippa saying, what was Moshe doing if not praying? Was he asking in a way that isn't considered praying? So I think the Rebbe's vart here is that asking for matnas chinam is not one of the modalities of prayer. And that's why the Sifri separates it. Unlike the Medrash that kind of does the mashup of, yes, matnas chinam, but it's one of the modalities of prayer. And the Sifri very deliberately separates it. And the Rebbe teaches that this signals to us that matnas chinam is a level that transcends tefillah. And therefore, it could be efficacious even after a gezerah. Now the Rebbe is going to bring us. Yeah,
I'm a little stuck here. What's the difference? What's it I was saying here? What's the difference between the Eibishter is mevater? One is mevater on the outcome that he can go into Eretz Yisrael, but yet the Gezerah is still in effect. Isn't the Gezerah that he can go into Eretz Yisrael?
Okay. There were two things. There was a shvua and a gezerah.
What does that mean?
I think simply it means that Hashem made a shvua that he's not going to be able to go in, and that separately Hashem was geyser that he's not going to be able to go in. So when Moshe saw,
what is the difference between the two? The difference is that the Eibush made it twice. What is the difference? I'm asking between the shvua and the gezerah. The shvua itself is a gezerah, and the gezerah is in itself a shvua.
No,
if you're geyser,
it seems that that's not the case. According to what that's teaching us, it's not the case. They're not mutually. They're not. They're not transposable. It's not like, oh, when you make it seems from the Sikha, what the Rebbe is saying is that there were two things. There was a Shvua and there was a Gezerah. Now, when Moshe saw that part of the Shvua seemed to him to have been taken off because he was able to capture Sichan and Oig, and that became Eretz Yisrael. And there's this rule that when a partial aspect of a Shvua is abnegated, then the whole shvua falls. So based on that, he jumped on the chance to now beg Hashem to rescind the gezerah also.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to figure out what's a gezerah. I understand what a shvua is, but in this context, what's a gezerah mean? That's all so you can make a gezerah, but it isn't. It doesn't mean it's going to have to. But it doesn't mean it's going to have to happen. When you make a vow, it has to happen. You can't. It's breaking it is much harder. But maybe a gezerah is hard. I'm just trying.
Yeah, no, I think the opposite. It seems it's mashma from this that it's the opposite. That maybe a shvua could be walked back, and a gezerah is more difficult. I mean, I don't know enough about the difference between gezerah and shvua, but it seems like the Rebbe is saying it's two different things.
Okay, thank you.
I wasn't that hopeful, but Okay, so now the Rebbe says, the Shleimar, that now to deepen this and to kind of, the Rebbe brings us yet another kind of limud that correlates with this. Shalder higam hasbara b'machloikes habavli v'harshalmi b'maimer hamishna shetfila al isha muberes sheteled ishti zocha harezu tfilas shav. That what we've done here by comparing the Sifri and the Medrash and how it correlates with the different opinions about when tefillah in general is efficacious is also correlated with a machlekes that is treated differently in the Bavli and the Yerushalmi concerning a Mishnah that says that for a husband to pray that his wife should give birth to a son is considered a tfilas shav. There's no efficacy to it. It's for naught. So what's the difference? Lefi habavli din hamishna misyaches gam lisman shetekef la'achar ha'arboim yoim achar shenikva kfar tzuras havlat. According to the Bavli, the Mishnah is relating to the time after the 40 days from conception and after the time that the tzuras havlad, that the formation of the fetus has taken place. Today we would talk in terms of chromosomes and so on and so forth. Masha enkein laha Yerushalmi, but in contradistinction, the Yerushalmi understands the Mishnah that it's koi dafka, that the Mishnah refers specifically b'yesheves al hamashber, to a woman who's already sitting on the birthing stool. Aval koidem lachein ma'ila hatfila l'shanes minekeva l'zachar. According to the very good Chani, the Rebbe is going to relate to this. The Rebbe is going to relate to this in 2 minutes. Chani is asking about Dina and Leah. Okay, but first the Rebbe is explaining. Again, the Bavli is saying that it's considered a tfilas shav even after the first 40 days from conception. The Yerushalmi is saying, no, it's only a tfilas shav. It's only a tefillah for naught when she's actually sitting on the birthing stool. Aval koidem lachein, but earlier than that, ma'ila hatfila l'shanes minekeva l'zachar. Prayer can be efficacious to change the sex, the gender of the child. V'lechad man da'amar, and according to one opinion, af hayesheves al hamashber yachal l'shtanes. And even the woman who's sitting on the birthing stool, it's still possible to change. Now, mitzad habavli asher oifen halimud b'talmud bavli hu b'derech milmata l'mayla, from the perspective of the Bavli, and the Bavli is all about milmata l'mayla, from grassroots upward, meaning it's all about the difficult work of figuring out what it is that is being said here. Yesh ribui koishies chulu v'nitreches yigias ha'adam k'tei lover l'dei maskana. In the Bavli, there are a lot of questions, and you need a lot of toil to come to a definitive understanding. Harei gam inyan hatfila nibdad lefi gidrei v'hagbalas hamispalel. So the Bavli is all about the isarusa dilatata, our work, what we're doing here. And so the Bavli relates to tefillah based on the parameters and the limitations of the one who is offering the prayer. The chayvan sha'al piteva ein havlad yachal l'shtanis la'achar b'ayim yayim minekeva l'zachar harezu tefillah shav. And because after 40 days, it's not possible to change the gender, it's considered a tefillah for naught. V'zuhi gam hasbara b'tiritz b'bavli sham ala she'ela mepnei ma matzinu b'lei dazdina shatfila ha'ila la'achar b'ayim. And this is also the explanation that the Bavli gives on the question of how is it that we find that regarding Dina, that the tefillah that Yosef and Dina should be changed, that was after 40 Yom. Sheshem hayezeh ma'aseh nisim. That was miraculous. Kevan shaleah haysa milumedes b'nisim. Because Leah was used to nisim. A lot of nisim that happened in her life. L'chein etzla. Therefore, by her underscored, by her and by her alone, yechayla tefillah shemitzad adam lifal inyan shel nes. Therefore, in her case, if you're Leah, you're able to effectuate a miracle with your prayer. But in contradistinction, when you're talking about the Yerushalmi, the learning of the Yerushalmi is not so connected with the toil of the person. It's much shorter because it's much less filled with questions and answers and machlekes and so on and so forth. It's not so connected to the toil of the person. But the Yerushalmi comes, like when Chassidus says, there's a Ar Yasher and there's a Ar Chayzer. The Ar Yasher comes directly from Hashem. The Ar Chayzer is what ricochets back upwards because of our efforts. The Yerushalmi is a Ar Yasher. It comes as a present from above. Gam kan hatfila hi derech matnas chinam she'ein la kol agbolos. So the Yerushalmi is talking about tefillah that defies and transcends all limitations. It's matnas chinam. So that's why the Shalmi says that even when she's sitting on the birthing stool, it's even then, it's not considered a tefillah shav if the husband is praying that it should be a boy and not a girl. Yeah, we're just going to compartmentalize our emotions and feelings about this discussion.
This thing about how, it's an answer to Esther about the difference between Xera and the Shvua by this example. Like it's an Xera of that you cannot change the gender of a baby. It's not a Shvua. I'm just saying that might spark understanding of the difference.
Maybe. Thanks.
Sorry,
I didn't know you were here because usually it's R-O-J-I. Now it's R-O-C-H-I. Hi. Khani, sorry.
Sorry, I'm just trying to understand I didn't really understand the paragraph before. It talks about that this is the aspara of how we understand about Dina. Is it saying that it's not about? Can you explain that paragraph just before again, if it's possible?
Yeah. First, the Rebbe says, what is the style? What's the energy? What's the vibe? What's the modality of the Bavli? It's really all about Isarusa Dilatata. It's all about the person who's learning, their kasha and their teretz and the plukta between the people. You have to put in a lot of yagia to learn the Bavli. And in like fashion, when the Bavli is studying or teaching us about tefillah, it's all about the capabilities of the person. Because it's about the person, the Rebbe says in the brackets, now we could understand the question and the answer that the Bavli gives about Leah. Because if it's about the person, Leah's in a different category. She's milumedes benisim. She led a miraculous life, and therefore she was able to change the gender of her child at even a very late date. Masha Enkain, the Yerushalmi is all about Or Yashar. It's all about Isrusa de la Ela. It's all about Matnas China. So if it's about Matnas China, and it's not about what a person can accomplish, then the sky is the limit. There is no limit. Ches. Va'abir bazeh al derech hachasidus. And now the Rebbe says, let's understand this al pi chasidus. Rabbeinu Hazakim mevar b'lekutei Torah be'inyan ein ve'eschanan ela matnas chinam. The Alter Rebbe explains in a Maimer Lekutei Torah on this idea that Veschanan is always about matnas chinam. Shal yedei knisasei la'aretz bikesh Moshe lifol she'etzel b'nei Yisrael Ta'ir madrega nalis b'yaiser she'efshar la'asik al yidei avodas hanivroim. That by Moshe filibustering Hashem and wanting to go into Eretz Yisrael, what Moshe really wanted to accomplish was to effectuate that Bnei Yisrael should have access to a higher level than what can be accessed and accomplished through Avodas Hanivraim, through the Avodah that we created creatures can do. Ubeloshen haChasidus, and to say the Lashon of Chasidus is Sarusa de La'ela Shalamayla Lagame Misarusa de Latata. So the Alter Rebbe teaches that what Moshe Rabbeinu wanted was not just simply to cross over the border himself, but what he was trying to accomplish was to break or smash a border. And that is the border between Isarusa de Latata and Isarusa de La'ela. He wanted Bnei Yisrael to be able to come into the level of Isarusa de La'ela. V'zui halashon matnas chinam. What does chinam mean? Chinam b'loi mitzvahs. Madrega shehi lamayla mayla mivchinas hamitzvahs. He wanted Bnei Yisrael to come in to a level of relationship, you could say, that transcends the quid pro quo of what you did or didn't do. It's not about mitzvahs. I mean, maybe I'm cheching here, and I really try not to do this, but to me, it seems that the Rebbe was able to accomplish this, to bring us into a place of chinam b'loi mitzvahs, because until the Rebbe, even if you look into the Maimorim of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbeim, you have, inyanim of schar and einish and different levels of Jews and even lashonos about Jews that can't go into here and can't go into here. And the Rebbe came and he completely brought us into Eretz Yisrael. He completely broke this barrier, this gevul, and said it's matnas chinam. It's not about mitzvahs. Or you could say, in other words, you could say that the Rebbe created a reality that focused on and celebrated and showcased the Yechida Shebenefesh. On the levels of Ruach, of Ruach and Neshama and, Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, and Chaya, there are limitations. There could be gezeras, there could be shvuas, but nothing can touch the Yechida. And I think that sometimes we're so used to this privilege, we're so used to this chiddush, that we can't even understand people that look at us like we're crazy. But the emes is that this is a spectacular chiddush. This idea of chinam b'loi mitzvahs, madrega shehi l'mayla mayla mivchinas hamitzvahs, v'al pizeh muvenes faras hasifri. And through this, we can understand the sifri on a much deeper level. Asher lefia perish v'eschanan matnas chinam ein zeh ma'asara l'shayna shel tefillah. It's not a tefillah. In the Medrash, it's a mashup. The Medrash says it was tefillah. Elamai, it was the tachanunim type of tefillah. And the Sifri says, no, this was the eschanan. It's not connected to tefillah. It's matnas chinam. Because, the Rebbe explains, ha-tefillah harehi avoida b'derech isarusa dilatata. Tefillah is an inyan of overture from below. It's called avodah shebelev. It's our work. It's our toil. It's our labor. V'lachein k'dei lifol eitz al kadosh baruch hu as miloi hamevukash de'ebra na ve'era goimer, and in order to effect a fulfillment of what Moshe was asking for, that he should be able to cross over and he should be able to see Eretz Yisrael. And according to Chassidus, what he really wanted was to bring Bnei Yisrael into a whole different level of relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. So his bakasha had to be in alignment with what he was asking for. Levakesh, to ask, loy b'lashon shel tefillah, ela matnas chinam mamash. He's asking for matnas chinam. It has to be in a way of matnas chinam. She'ena ba klal mitzad zachis hamivakesh, kenal barucha. And a matnas chinam does not come because of the merits of the one who is asking. It transcends that. Tess. And yet, this notwithstanding, the Medrash says that Veschanan Matnas Chinam is one of the 10 modalities of prayer. So the Rebbe is doing here what he does very often. He shows us how there's two different things. He draws attention to the distinction, and then he draws attention to the fact that they are ultimately of one whole. We'll understand this based on what the Tzemach Tzedek taught on the Maimer that the Rebbe referenced at the beginning of Seif Ches from the Alter Rebbe. Belukutei Torah mevor habakasha hanal de Moshe shetia bechinas Yisrosa de La'ela shalamala Yisrosa de Latata he inyan haTorah. So the Tzemach Tzedek takes us deeper in this and he explains that what's the inyan of Yisrosa de La'ela? Generally speaking, Yisrosa de La'ela is the inyan of Torah. Me'achar shalidei Torah nimshach mivchinas anoichi misha anoichi. Because what's Torah? Torah brings down into this world the transcendent, the anoichi. Shehi l'mayla Yisrosa de Latata is way, way higher than anything a person can do. Hainu shehi ba b'derech matana. So Torah is always Yisrosa de La'ela. It's always matnas china. Umaksha Tzemach Tzedek. So now, based on this, if Yisrosa de La'ela is correlated with Torah, so the Tzemach Tzedek asks the question: Im kei madua nemar al kach sheMoshe Rabbeinu lo yipal al yidei tefillasei. So why should we say, like Rivky wrote, I think in the chat earlier, but I didn't have a chance to see everything that she wrote, but I think she wrote, but it didn't work. Hashem said no. So the Tzemach Tzedek asked, so why do we say that Moshe Rabbeinu's tefillah was not efficacious? Harei haTorah nimtzeis biyadenu. But Moshe did give us a Torah. Torah is Yisrosa de La'ela. V'al yada nimshach gam ata mevchina zu Yisrosa de La'ela. And from the Torah, even to this day, comes this hamshacha of Yisrosa de La'ela that the Alter Rebbe says Moshe wanted to effectuate. Umeva'er. Tzemach Tzedek explains, Shabakashas Moshe Haisa, Shahamshacha, Sha'al Yidei Torah, Haba B'derech Matana B'Yisrosa de La'ela, Tifa Lemata Ba'olam. But what Moshe wanted to do is to bring down the hamshacha, bring down the effluence that comes through Torah, that comes B'derech Matana, that is Yisrosa de La'ela. But what did Moshe want? That it should come down through what's done lamata ba'elam. Asher zeu ha'yisron b'pa'ulas hatfila legabe haTorah. Because this is what tefillah has over Torah. This is the yisron. This is the superlative characteristic of tefillah.
Advantage.
The advantage, thank you, of tefillah over Torah. That it's done through the work of Yisrosa de Latata. Aval alidei hatfila poelim l'shanais hanivraim mikmoi shehem sheyisrape achayla v'yered hageshem v'chulei. I'm sorry, I skipped. Going back. Shahat Torah pa'elas be'ikar l'mayla. Torah, in the main, affects things above. Ba'olamais elyonim, in the worlds above. Aval alidei tefillah, but through tefillah, payalim l'shanes hanivraim mikamoshahem, you can effectuate that people should be changed from their situation. For instance, that a ill person should become well, the rain should come down where there was a drought. And the Rebbe says, because tefillah comes milmata lamaila, because tefillah is an avodah that originates milmata, therefore it also saturates the mata, the place where the tefillahs take place. And what did Moshe want? V'ratzain Moshe haya lifol shagam hahamshacha lemata tia b'derech yisrael d'la'ela al yidei ha'Torah. If you're feeling a little bit of whiplash, then that's okay. Then that's exactly what. Because first, the Rebbe is saying that there's something in a Sarusa de la Ela that can't be accomplished with Sarusa de la Tata, and Moshe wanted to smash the barrier and take us into that place. Okay, but then the Rebbe is saying, but look at the Medrash. The Medrash is saying there's two things. There's Beschana and Matnas China, which we now know correlates to Torah, correlates to Sarusa de la Ela. And then there's the way in which Veschanan is one of the 10 ways of prayer. And that correlates with Tefillah. And that correlates with Isarusa Dilatata. What did Moshe want? Moshe wanted that Bnei Yisrael should be able to effectuate Isarusa Dila'ela, that level, through their work in this world, through Isarusa Dilatata. Nothing less than a merging of opposing features, which is really what Chassidus is all about. Right? Vizehu the Isa b'Medrash, and this is what the Medrash teaches. Shagam bakashas matnas chinam shel Moshe hisaloshan shel tefillah. Lefisha Moshe rotze es hachibor beis hama'alis, because what Moshe wanted was nothing less than the merging of both of these advantages. Even though he wanted Bnei Yisrael to come into a whole new level, which was this Arusa de La'ela, and is, of course, Matnas Chinam, Mikol Makam Tered Ad Lemata Mata B'Makam Atfila. But he wanted it to be able to come down into the lowest of the low realms in the Makam of Tefillah. And that's why there were both things in his tefillah. So look what the Rebbe did. He showed us, look, I mean, who learns like this? Who is so privileged, right? You might see a Sifri, you see the Medrash, you're like, all right, they're both saying the same thing. Cool, I know what to say to my class. No, the Rebbe says it's two different things. The Sifri is delineating the two levels. And the Medrash is saying that what Moshe wanted ultimately was that they should be fused, just like the Medrash fuses them. It was a lashon of tefillah, but what did Moshe want? Something that is superlative, something that transcends tefillah. His bakasha was a bakashas matnas chinam. Yud. Aval pikein loy pal zois Moshe b'tfilasai. And although Moshe wanted this, he did not effect this. Lefisha tachlis hakavana hi shekol ha'inyanim yavayu al yedei avoda. Even though Moshe wanted that Bnei Yisrael, through their avoda, should come into a level of Zrusa de La'ela, the Eibush just said, no. Why? Because the Tachlis HaKavana is avodas atzmis. This is another thing the Rebbe stressed always from the first time, from the Yud Shvat. So, Retzach nish ein fegelach in bosom, that I'm going to do all the work for you and you're just going to ride on my coattails. Right away, the Rebbe said, we're going to harvest this out, we're going to toil, we're going to work on this together. because the tachlis hakavana is that it should come through avoda. It should come through our yigia. V'lachein av shemitzad zeh sheMoshe lo nichnas le'eretz Yisrael ha'isa knisa le'eretz Yisrael al yedei Yeshua pnei levana sheyesh ba shinuyim. And so, because of this, because from the perspective that Moshe didn't come into Eretz Yisrael, who brought Pnei Yisrael into Eretz Yisrael was Yeshua. Yeshua is Pnei Levana, right? Moshe is the son. Yeshua reflects all of the sun. He's Pnei Levana. What do we know about the Levana? Sheyesh ba shinuyim. The moon is constantly waxing and waning. The sun is unchanging, and the moon is known for its constant changing. Umemela haya mokem la'achrei ze'elis avos in hagolos. If Moshe would have gone in, there would not have been golos after that. But that wasn't Hashem's plan, because Hashem's plan was that it should be avodah, and therefore Yeshua brought them in. By Yeshua, there is room for all kinds of waxing and waning. There was going to be golus. There was going to be difficult times. That was going to require avodah. If Moshe would have taken us into Eretz Yisrael, that would have been the eternal geula. There would have been no place at all for avodas hamata, because what Moshe wanted was access to Isarusa de La'ela as it saturates as it saturates the mata. So it's davka through going in under Yeshua. Yeshua's Pnei Levana. We become vulnerable to the ups and the downs, the waxing and the waning. And only in this situation is there the maila of our avodah, lemase yadecha tichsev. Hashem says, I yearn for your work. I yearn for your overtures. Asher mamshicha or na'ala yaser lemaila meha or haba alidei matnas chinam. And our avodah and our overtures elicit a light that is higher, that is even higher than the light that comes through matnas chinam, which is a light that completely surpasses and transcends anything you could do through tefillah. And this will be revealed here below with the complete and true geula through Mashiach Tzidkenu. May it be in our day, literally. May it be in this hour, literally. And we not have to go into Tisha B'Av. Sarah